is always my favorite time of the week because I can hit up Dr. Maryweather with free veterinary advice. And lucky for me, she told me it seemed like my dog is fine. He's just being a little bit cuddlier, a little bit, and it doesn't seem that much cooler, but it's really unlike my Otis, my beagle, to be. He's very independent, likes his own bed usually, but he's been hanging out there with us. He likes to crawl right in between our pillows there and just curl up into a little ball. So he seems to no other issues though. But that's kind of, and we'll get into reptiles in a minute because you have a focus on exotic pets. But that is kind of the issue with any animal. Just if you know them well enough to kind of observe them for a little while to see how their behavior is, to see how they react, right?
Yeah, definitely true. A change in behavior sometimes is your first sign that something's at least different.
Now, he could be, since he's 8 years old, maybe his beagle's finally mellowing out. Like my other one is 11. He's got a lot of energy, but people ask me that, who want to get beagles, when do they start mellowing out? I said, maybe around the age of 5. So, it just depends. And so that may be the thing, but that's really important. I think, though, with reptiles, such as lizards, snakes, am I missing anything? So pretty much the gamut. Tortoise, okay.
Turtles.
It's they're not as always as personable. It
really depends on the reptile. There are definitely some that are known for not enjoying handling, like chameleons are pretty solitary creatures in the wild. So even if they tolerate it, I would hesitant to say any of them like being handled.
How do they like it when you attach them to your blue shirt just to see if they change colors, or, things like that? They used to. I don't think they do that anymore, but I remember back when I was a kid, they would sell them at the fair, and they would actually be attached to a little pin. They weren't pinned, but they were and you could actually put them on your clothing and wear them around, and they would.
Yeah, well, I know we have a chameleon at the clinic, and he likes to climb on top of your head. But
he's a little bit warmer and fuzzier, but some of them are really kind of stable. But that's,
yeah, even with him, he's pretty tame and handleable. But even him, I doubt really likes to be handled so much as he's like, you're the one that feeds me.
Now he's the one that seems like when I go in there, and isn't he in a little aquarium there on the front desk, or is this somewhere else?
I think we've moved him to the back now. Okay.
But he's the one that you could never see because he's a chameleon.
Always hiding.
Yeah. But that's with that though, in talking about personalities, it's kind of tough to tell, and especially when maybe your snake or your iguana or whatever you have may be ill. They're not really big on letting you know, and it's not like they make coughing noises or anything, right? What would you do? How would you be able to determine if there may be something wrong with your reptile?
So a lot of times it's not acting right. That's usually the first sign. Kind of what I see them for usually when they're coming in. They're usually coming in like they haven't eaten. It's kind of a good one as far as things that people notice. But definitely, a change in behavior or, oftentimes we recommend, we always recommend, bringing, especially for annual exams on reptiles. Mainly because a lot of the illnesses they get are very, very preventable by making some, basic changes and kind of the way their tank or cage is set up. Mainly because it is really hard to tell.
Right, and a lot of times they just kind of hang out there, and it kind of becomes out of sight, out of mind, unless you actually interact with them a lot. And that's the thing. Talking about snakes, for example, I met Alice Cooper, you know who he is, right? Alice Cooper, the rock star, about 20 years ago, and he brought in an event, and he had his python with him, or not python, maybe it's a python, right? The big snakes, is that right? Am I right? Python, probably. Are those allowed? Can you have those as pets?
Well, it really depends on the creature. There's actually a huge problem, especially in California, where you can get many wild creatures that are totally not legal to have.
Right.
And it's an issue we see in that there's little regulation.
Right.
Where there really ought to be.
So what are the most common kinds of for snakes that people get as pets?
Well, a lot of the ball pythons, really the ones that are available at Petco are probably the ones I've seen the most. So there's some geckos, a few chameleons, bearded dragons are very popular.
Okay.
And I think they're a great pet.
Now, are these types of animals trainable? Is there anything you can really do with them, or are they kind of very independent?
It depends on kind of what you're getting and what you want it for. Definitely, I think as far as handling, maybe a bearded dragon would be the best choice. or even like an iguana. You know, definitely if you want something that's going to hang out with you and like to be around you, I wouldn't get a chameleon, for example.
Or a Komodo dragon. I heard they're a little, can be a little dicey.
You might have some trouble finding someone to treat your Komodo dragon.
That, and not to mention they are highly illegal too.
Yes, there's a lot of things that are highly illegal that people for some reason will get as a pet.
Right, and that's. That
an
kind
awful idea.
Yes, it is, because you're not going to be able to get it treated, and second of all, there is a reason why.
Yeah, and a lot of them are poisonous.
Right.
So
like Komodo dragons, by the way, they bite you. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But talking about coming back to this and things that we should do as far as keeping them secure, like snakes, they are something that can easily hide. Right?
Yes, and they're notorious for being able to get out of their tanks. You know, I think definitely the best idea is that reptiles, I think more than almost anything, are not a spur-of-the-moment purchase. You know, and so you really need to do your research and really kind of know ahead of time what you're getting into, because they can be quite expensive, especially to set up correctly.
Understand the pet. We're going to talk more about that, because I think it's a really interesting idea about almost any pet that you're going to get anyway, but especially these types of exotics.
Especially exotics, yeah.
And we're going to talk about that. We do have to take a station break and do some things, and then come back with traffic, and we'll come back more with Dr. Maryweather. By the way, from All Creatures Veterinary Center, you just got off work, because this is a 24/7 pet care clinic on Lyons Avenue in Newhall, and also you guys are associated, your partner company or your partner location, Canyon Country Veterinary Center, located on Veterinary Hospital, begging your pardon, located on Soledad next to Edwards Cinema. We'll be right back after this. We're back with Dr. Maryweather from All Creatures Veterinary Center, and said you just got off work. You work usually the night shift.
Yeah.
You are the night physician. Is it physician for a veterinary? Night veterinarian. Sure. I like animal physician. That sounds very, 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 very distinctive. But night veterinarian.
Yep.
So any time, because our pets don't always get sick between the normal business hours.
Sometimes I think they prefer the inconvenient hours.
They're like kids. Sure. We're just going to, it'd be nice to just have a nice night, wouldn't it? And you can get up early and go to work and everything else. Forget it. We're going to get sick right now, right after we jump up on the bed and just, wow, we lose it. But you are also have an emphasis in exotic pets. And we've been talking the last few weeks about different things, rodents, rabbits, and also birds. And this week we're talking about reptiles.
Yeah.
And how they like to, especially snakes, like to escape their confines and stretch if they had legs, they would be stretching their legs, but in this case, they're stretching their something. They're stretching their tummies, I guess, however they move along. But when we started touching on this, it's not a spur-of-the-moment pet. Any type of reptile, you really should do your research, right?
Yeah. And it's a lot of it's species by species. And so, it's a lot of finding the right information, because there's a lot of wrong information out there, and making sure you have the correct setup. Both, the big enough tank, the right things in it, and definitely, most of our reptiles, for the overwhelming majority, do require like UVB light bulbs. So they, require special lights and usually a heat lamp of some kind, plus making sure that you can measure the temperature within the cage and making sure that things are the right temperature. So it's, they're almost kind of I don't want to say like a hobby animal, but a lot of it's going to be like working on the husbandry and, making improvements wherever you can.
Because if not, and it's also an investment. They're not, all of those not very cheap. And that's cheap. And that's almost with any pet you want to do that. I mean, but especially with reptiles, it's not like where, someone's got a box of kittens in front of the grocery store and it's like, oh, that's so cute. Little box, little baby geckos. Let's get them. It really is something that you got to consider.
People, I don't think, realice how much, especially when it comes to like, if it's a first pet for a family or something.
And what is it? What kind of pet owner, or I don't know if you can answer this or not, would prefer a reptile over, let's say, a dog or a cat? Is there any particular personality, or is just they are people?
I think probably people who aren't afraid of reptiles. Otherwise, they're cool animals, so they're definitely fans.
Really,
out there, especially if you're allergic to dogs or cats.
How many reptiles do you own?
I own none.
Oh, none. You just treat them. Very clever.
I treat them. I have a bird at home.
Well, that's right. You have the bird, the sometimes fussy particular bird.
Yeah.
But,
Yes. It's a full household.
I see. But with reptiles, and it's true, whether it's children or adults or whoever, just making sure that they're taken care of properly, making sure that you're able to make sure they're being fed properly. And here's something about snakes, especially the pythons or the larger snakes. Do they have to be fed live animals, or is there something else that they can
So
have?
there's kind of a lot of variety and opinions in this. I think part of the concern we see with these guys is a lot of reptiles in general insist on live prey. So they're not domesticated. They're not like dogs or cats. Which we have kind of adapted to lived in our homes a little bit.
Purina snake food or anything.
Yeah, and so and especially I think with a reptile, you're getting a wild creature. And it's in your house.
Okay.
And so a lot of them will refuse to eat, something that's been frozen, for example. But some of them will. Like, some of them will take frozen mice. We defrost them first. But a lot of them require live prey.
So you have to understand this. It really goes to important to your research and understanding.
Yeah.
If you've got an issue with that, you're squeamish about that, or for any reason, those are things you got to consider in going toward that.
Yeah, and just as important as what you're feeding it is a lot of, especially with snakes, is the size that you're feeding them. And so making sure that you're not feeding anything too big and not feeding anything too small.
Right. And also their digestive systems, how they work differently. So, how they kind of eat all at once in some cases, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. So we talked about the husbandry, the things to look for. Care and keeping, and also just what to look out for. That is awesome. Dr. Maryweather, All Creatures Veterinary Center. You get to go home now and relax, but the night shift veterinarian. So if any type of issues that you have, remember All Creatures Veterinary Center, located on Lyons Avenue in New Hall, is a 24/7 operation. If you live on this side of town and it's during kind of normal operation hours and you have pet issues, you can take them also to Canyon Country Veterinary Hospital, located on Soledad Canyon next to the Edwards Cinema. Always a pleasure, Doctor. And
thanks for having me.
Have a great week.